Welcome to the Olympus Report, demigods, monsters, and gods alike. Demigods, Percy Jackson showed up at New York ComicCon. This may have been the best Comic-Con I've ever been to, and I've been going since 2010, and a lot of it had to do with Percy Jackson. From day one, as you walked into the Javits Center, there was a 50-foot poster featuring Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. But not only that, the Disney publishing booth was decked out in promotional images of Percy Jackson, and they were giving out free buttons, a credit card holder, and samples of the sun and the star. The last two I got. Unfortunately, they ran out of buttons and I couldn't snag one of those. But the biggest thing to happen this weekend was the Percy Jackson panel on Sunday, October 15th. And if you were lucky enough to be one of the first 500 people in attendance, you got a free Camp Half-Blood shirt. And I was one of them. Guys, just look how incredible this looks. The black design on the front and on the back, the characters' autographs. In fact, I think we need a costume change. So I'll be right back. All right, now back to the panel. The creators and directors shared some insights into creating Percy Jackson. Things like how they decided to have the Minotaur run on 4 legs and stand on 2 legs because it made it look scarier, and how it was really difficult to find the right shade of Camp Half-Blood Orange. In fact, this was one of the most difficult tasks they had to deal with. We also got a look at some new images of Camp Half-Blood, including a Camp Half-Blood flag, a detailed picture of the Hermes cabin, and the archery range. They also talked about how incredible the main and supporting cast of the show was, and we got a look at some characters for the first time in costume, including Virginia Cole as Sally Jackson, Tim Sharp as Gabe Ugliano, Dior Goodjohn as Clarice LaRue, Charlie Bushnell as Lou Castellan, Glenn Turman as Chiron, aka Mr. Brunner, Jason Mantzoukas as Dionysus, aka Mr. D, Megan Mullally as Alecto, aka Mrs. Dodds, Jessica Parker Kennedy as Medusa, Suzanne Cryer as Echidna, Lance Reddick as Zeus, Toby Stevens as Poseidon, Jay Duplass as Hades, Adam Copeland as Ares, Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes, and Timothy Amundsen as Hephaestus. But Half-Bloods, the biggest takeaway from this panel is they showed not 1, not 2, but 3 scenes from Percy Jackson. That's right, I got to watch approximately 15 minutes of the show. And I know I've said this before, but now I can say it with certainty. This show is absolutely insane. It's incredible. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't film the scenes because I don't want to be sued by Disney. But I did manage to record some audio, which I will play for you in very small snippets because, again, Disney, please don't sue me. So let's hop into the first scene they showed. They showed the first 7 minutes of the first episode. And Half-Bloods, I so called it. The show does not start right away at the museum. In fact, the show starts with Percy narrating. The narration is literally ripped right out of the first chapter of The Lightning Thief.
I didn't want to be a half-blood.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed.
And we actually get to see footage go along with this. We see Percy in the 2nd grade, a tiny Percy. He's climbed up to the roof of his school building because he claims to have seen something, but the teachers tell him it was nothing. We then see what he thinks he saw, a black Pegasus. And guys, I am so calling this now. I think that's Blackjack. Percy then sees an automaton rhino, which then transforms into a garbage truck. Percy talks about how he really hasn't had any friends and has dealt with bullies all his life until he met Grover. This scene from the trailer is actually during this part. We then finally arrive at the museum where Mr. Brunner, aka Chiron, is teaching them about the exhibit. He asks them to pick something to write about. Something I would like to point out, the conversation where Chiron teaches them about Kronos is completely missing, which I find a little weird considering this literally sets up the main villain of the series, so I'm curious how they're going to remedy this further in the show, or if they just completely left it out. Percy then goes to look at the Perseus statue. We then get a flashback of when Percy was looking at this statue with his mom. We get a first look at Sally Jackson. Sally is telling Percy why she named him Perseus and tells him that even though some people look like heroes doesn't necessarily mean they're heroes, and just because some people look like monsters doesn't necessarily mean they're monsters. We then get our first look at Nancy Bobafett, who is nasty. She picks on Percy and Mrs. Dodds reprimands Percy just like in the book. Mr. Brunner then comes over to console Percy and gives him a pen. Riptide. Just listen to the audience reaction here.
When you're ready to hear what the gods have in store for you, they'll tell you, I believe in you. And I believe you'll be needing this.
We then jump to lunch with Percy and Grover, and there's an absolutely adorable scene where Percy and Grover open each other's sandwiches, and Percy takes Grover's meat, and Grover takes Percy's lettuce. It's such brilliant filmmaking. It's showing us how close they are instead of telling us through narration in a book.
I get the Nancy's issues. I'm just getting tired of her taking them out on me. I feel like maybe it's time to do something about it. You could make an appointment to see Mr. K. He's really good. I was thinking more like shoving Nancy in the nearest dumpster.
Grover then gets a sandwich to the face, courtesy of Nancy Bobafett. Percy goes to confront her and she mysteriously ends up in the fountain. And that's where our first scene ended, Half-Bloods. I didn't want it to end, but I didn't have to wait for long because we got a second scene of Percy, Grover, and Sally driving frantically to camp in the rain. And I feel the need to say this because I don't think Arian is getting enough love. This kid is absolutely 100% Grover. I absolutely loved every line that came out of his mouth. On the way to camp, Grover is explaining everything to Percy. Things like the mist, and Percy is just a little bit peeved that he's been lied to all these years.
I'm sorry. What's ahead of me, boys? Yeah, I'm actually 24.
The way that Grover just casually says, oh, by the way, I'm 24, absolutely hilarious. Arian really killed that line delivery. The Minotaur then catches up with the car, and this thing is terrifying, even though he's wearing tighty whities. The Minotaur uses his horn to break the window of the car and latches onto the steering wheel. And we stay inside the car the whole time. The scene is absolutely electrifying. You can really feel the tenseness. And by not showing the Minotaur, by having it as this mysterious figure outside really adds to the danger and the scariness. And unfortunately, that's where our second scene ended. But we didn't have to wait long, Half-Bloods, because Becky and Rick Riordan came out on stage to announce the final clip.
And you've seen a couple of great clips. Are you up for one more? Okay. Well then, this is one of my favorites. Let's go to Camp Half-Blood and play Capture the Flag.
So let's talk Capture the Flag. And tell me guys, I was so wrong. Remember when I thought this picture took place after training with Luke? It doesn't. It takes place after Capture the Flag. The scene starts with our first look at Charlie Bushnell as Luke Castellan. This is Luke Castellan. After the opposing army retreats, someone asks Luke why they're not going after the flag. And Luke replies that Annabeth has a plan and that Percy is in place. We then cut to Percy, absolutely not in place. He's dancing, petting lizards, and peeing on rocks. And the whole scene is absolutely hilarious. It's just Percy being a 12-year-old kid, which I think sometimes we forget. But unfortunately, he's interrupted by Clarice and her cabin mates. Clarice chases Percy through the forest down to the river, and we get our first good look at Clarice in action with her electric spear. And guys, Dior Goodjohn absolutely nails it. Clarice is terrifying. Percy is just barely holding his own, getting sliced up real good, hence where this rip came from. But once Percy gets closer to the river, he starts fighting back and holding his own. And then he's able to break Clarice's spear, and she's absolutely furious. But before she can do anything, the rest of the camp shows up. Luke has captured the flag, and they have won. And then we hear our first line from Leah Jeffries as Annabeth Chase. She shows up invisible and takes off her Yankees cap. And guys, the effect looked absolutely flawless.
Yes? You were here the whole time and you didn't help me? Yes. Why?
It's perfect. I love how she's so calculating. All she wanted to do was win, and she didn't consider the consequences, which she'll eventually come to learn. Annabeth, then fed up with Percy's questions, pushes him and he falls into the water, where his wounds miraculously start healing. And Percy says, "I don't understand." And then the scene ended, right before the claiming. I cannot believe they did that to us, Half-Bloods, but I guess I can't complain too much because we were so lucky to see what we did. Half-Bloods, trust me, you are not going to be disappointed. This show is incredible. I went to the panel with my friend who has never read a Percy Jackson book. She's only watched the original movies, which she liked. But to be fair, guys, she didn't read the books. When she saw the trailer for the new show, she complained that the kids were too young. And when I explained that that's how they're supposed to be, she said she didn't care. But after this panel, I think she was even more excited for the show than me. Just kidding, that's pretty hard to do. But the point being is that this show is going to make fans out of non-believers. And I can't wait to see it happen. Thank you, Half-Bloods, for tuning in. Were you at the panel? Let me know what you thought down below in the comments. But until next time, I'll be signing off. And please always remember to stay safe.